Here's something that's happened to almost every single person alive. You're at a party, a work meeting, maybe just grabbing groceries. Someone walks up to you, smiling, clearly knowing exactly who you are, and your brain just stops. Their name is gone, completely, like it was never there to begin with. And now, every second of silence feels like an hour. So you do what we all do. You smile a little too wide. You say, "Hey, you," and you silently beg the universe that they don't notice. They notice. They always notice. And then it hits you. That hot, crawling embarrassment spreading across your chest. That little voice in your head going, "What is wrong with you?" Maybe you've told yourself you're just busy, stressed. You meet too many people. But if you're being honest with yourself right now, there's a part of you that wonders, does this mean something? Am I coming across as someone who just doesn't care about people? Because here's what nobody talks about. Forgetting someone's name isn't just awkward. It quietly chips away at your confidence. It makes you avoid introductions. It makes you dread reunions, networking events, first days at a new job, any situation where a name should be right there, and instead, your brain hands you absolutely nothing. And I want you to hear this clearly. This is not your memory failing you. This is not you being rude, and it is absolutely not a sign that something is wrong with you. The real reason your brain drops names is something far more fascinating, and when you understand it, you'll never look at your own mind the same way again. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly why this happens, what it says about how your brain actually works, and, most importantly, how to make it stop. Let's get into it.
Before we get into the why, I want to try something with you. I'm going to describe some situations, real ones, and all I need you to do is be honest. Not with me, just with yourself. Because if even a couple of these feel familiar, you're going to want to stick around for everything that comes next. Have you ever been reintroduced to someone you've already met 2, 3, maybe 4 times, and still had zero idea what their name was? Have you ever stood between 2 people you both know and physically maneuvered the entire conversation just to avoid the moment where you'd have to introduce them because one name was completely gone? Have you ever felt that quiet panic the second someone tells you their name because somewhere in the back of your mind you already know it's not going to stick? For the women watching, have you ever smiled and waved at someone in your mom group, your book club, your fitness class for weeks because at this point asking their name would just be too mortifying to even consider? For the men, have you ever shaken someone's hand at a networking event, heard their name clearly, and then 30 seconds later your friend asks, "Who was that?" and you just looked at them and said nothing? And the one that actually keeps people up at night, have you ever lain there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the reason you forget names is because deep down you just don't care enough about people, that maybe you're a little cold, a little selfish? That thought right there, that's the one that does the quiet damage. Every social interaction, every new face, that little whisper following you around like a storm cloud that never quite goes away. Here's what I need you to hear. Every single thing I just described, the avoiding, the panicking, the late-night Googling, none of that makes you a bad person. It makes you someone whose brain is doing something very specific, something that has a name and an explanation, and, this is the part that matters, a fix. So let's talk about what's actually going on inside your head.
Okay, here's where it gets actually interesting. Not textbook interesting. I mean the kind of thing where you hear it and immediately want to bring it up in your next conversation. Let's talk about what's literally happening inside your brain the second someone tells you their name. The moment you hear a name, your brain has to make a split-second call. And this is the part almost nobody talks about. Your brain doesn't process a name the way it processes a face or a voice or an emotion. Names, to your brain, are what neuroscientists call arbitrary sounds. Think about that for a second. Sarah, James, Emily. These words have zero meaning on their own. They don't describe anything. They don't paint a picture. They don't trigger a feeling. They're just sounds your brain has to somehow attach to a face it met 3 seconds ago. And your brain, your incredibly efficient, incredibly capable brain, looks at that job and essentially says, not right now. Because here's what is happening in those first few seconds. Your brain is reading their facial expressions, calculating threat or friend, processing their tone of voice, taking in the environment around you, managing your own anxiety about making a good impression, and trying to figure out what you're going to say next. That's an enormous amount happening at once, and something has to get dropped. Almost every time, it's the name. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, and I want you to really hold on to this. There's something called the encoding window, a tiny gap of time, 2 to 4 seconds, where your brain either locks in a new piece of information or loses it permanently. For most people, in those exact seconds after hearing a name, they're so far inside their own head, so caught up in their nerves, their next sentence, the impression they're making, that the encoding window closes before the name ever gets stored. Gone, before it even had a chance. And here's what makes it worse. Stress. When you're anxious, meeting someone important, a first date, a job interview, any situation where you actually want to make a good impression, your brain releases cortisol, and cortisol literally interferes with memory formation as it's happening. So the more you care about making a good impression, the more likely you are to forget their name. Sit with that for a second. The more you care, the worse it gets. This is why you can remember the name of the cashier you had zero nerves around, but completely blank on the person you really wanted to impress at that dinner party last month. It was never about caring. It was your brain under pressure doing exactly what brains under pressure do. And one more thing, because this one genuinely surprised me when I first came across it. Studies in social psychology have found that people who are highly empathetic, people who are naturally tuned in to reading emotions, body language, what's underneath what someone is saying, are actually more likely to forget names because their brain is so busy absorbing everything else about a person, how they feel, what they need, what they're not saying out loud, that the name simply doesn't make the cut. You might not be forgetting names because you don't care about people. You might be forgetting names because you care too much. Let that land, because here's what comes next, and this is where it gets personal. We've talked about what's happening in your brain. Now let's talk about what it's actually doing to your life, the habits you've built around it, the situations you've started avoiding, and exactly what to do about it. Let's talk about the story you've been telling yourself. Because every single time you forget a name, a narrative fires automatically in your head. You probably don't even notice it anymore. It just runs, quietly, in the background, doing its damage. It sounds something like this. I forgot their name because I wasn't paying attention. I forgot their name because I only think about myself. I forgot their name because deep down, I just don't value people the way I should. Sound familiar? Here's the problem with that story. It feels true. It even feels responsible, like you're holding yourself accountable, like a good person would. But what it's actually doing is slowly training you to show up smaller. Because when you carry that story into a room, when you've already decided you're someone who doesn't pay attention, who doesn't really care, your brain starts behaving like that person. You hover near the door instead of walking in. You keep conversations short so you never have to use their name. You smile and nod instead of actually connecting. And without realizing it, you start becoming a little more withdrawn, a little more guarded, a little less you. Every single social situation. All because of a story your inner critic wrote that was never even true. So let's replace it. Not with feel-good fluff, with what psychology actually says about people like you. People who forget names are almost always big-picture thinkers. Their brains naturally prioritize meaning, emotion, and patterns over isolated data points like names and numbers. This is literally how creative thinkers, entrepreneurs, and natural leaders are wired, running a wide-angle lens, absorbing the whole room at once while other brains are zoomed in tight on the details. Your brain isn't missing the name because it's weak, it's missing the name because it's busy doing something bigger. People who forget names also tend to be deeply present in the wrong moment. Not absent, present.
so locked into their own anxiety, their own genuine desire to connect, their own internal world firing at full speed, that the surface-level data just slips through a crack. You weren't checked out, you were too checked in, just to the wrong frequency. And here's one that genuinely caught me off guard when I first came across it. Highly active minds forget names more often, not because intelligence causes forgetfulness, but because a brain processing at multiple layers simultaneously, emotions, context, what to say next, how the other person is feeling, the name is just one signal out of 40 all firing at the same time. One screen out of 40. That's not negligence. That's a very full mind. Now, I'm going to say something important here, and I need you to actually hear it. None of this is a free pass. How people feel when you forget their name, that's real. It affects friendships. It affects how people perceive you at work, in relationships, in every room you walk into. That matters, and we're going to deal with it directly in the next module. But, and this is the part that changes everything, there is a massive difference between someone who forgets names because they genuinely don't care about people, and someone who forgets names because their mind is running full speed in 20 directions at once. One of those people doesn't care. The other one? That's you. And you care so much, it's actually working against you. And here's the thing nobody has probably ever said to you directly. The fact that this bothers you, the fact that you feel that quiet guilt every time it happens, that you replay conversations hoping someone said the name again, that you're watching a video right now trying to understand yourself better, that guilt is not the problem. That guilt is the proof that you care. Genuinely indifferent people don't feel this. They don't search for answers. They don't lie awake replaying a moment from 3 weeks ago wondering what it says about them. That's not who you are. You are not cold. You are not selfish. You are not broken. You're someone running a powerful mind in a noisy world without the right tools. And the tools, that's exactly where we're going right now.
So now you know what's happening in your brain. You know what it doesn't mean. But here's the part that's going to make you want to screenshot this video. People who consistently forget names share a very specific set of personality traits. And when you hear them, you're either going to feel incredibly seen or slightly called out. Probably both. 1. You live inside your head more than most people. Not in a distracted way, in a deep way. You process experiences internally before you express them externally. You're the person who thinks of the perfect thing to say about 3 hours after the conversation ended. 2. You read energy before you read details. When you meet someone new, your brain immediately goes, are they warm or cold, confident or nervous, genuine or performing? You get the whole emotional picture in seconds. The name just didn't make the short list. 3. You feel other people's discomfort almost physically, which is also exactly why forgetting their name hits you so hard, because you instantly feel what they feel. That's not a weakness. That's empathy running at full volume. 4. You are almost certainly more creative than average. Studies consistently link right brain dominant thinking with name forgetfulness. Artists, writers, entrepreneurs, problem solvers, these are your people. Your brain trades label storage for imagination space. Here's the uncomfortable truth, though, and I say this as your friend, not your critic. These traits are beautiful, but without awareness, they quietly cost you. In relationships, in first impressions, in opportunities you never even knew you lost. Which is exactly why what's coming next matters more than anything else in this video.
All right, this is what you actually came for. And I'm not going to waste your time with generic advice like repeat their name 3 times, because you've heard that. It didn't stick. None of it did. So let's talk about what actually works, and more importantly, why it works. Hack 1, the encoding pause. Remember that 2 to 4 second encoding window we talked about? You're going to use it intentionally now. The moment someone tells you their name, stop. Don't think about your response. Don't smile and move on. Just take one single breath and let that name land. One breath, that's it. That tiny pause is the difference between storing it and losing it forever. Hack 2, attach it to something alive. Your brain is terrible at storing abstract sounds, but incredible at storing images and stories. The second you hear a name, instantly link it to something visual. James, picture a king. Sarah,
Picture the sun. Weird works better. Funny works best. The more ridiculous the image, the harder your brain locks it in. Hack 3. Use it once, immediately. Not 3 times, not repeatedly, that gets creepy fast. Just once, right after they say it. Great to meet you, James. That single use fires the encoding process in real time and burns a small but permanent groove in your memory. One and done. Hack 4. The exit lock. When the conversation ends, as you're walking away, say their name one final time inside your head. Not out loud, just internally. James. James. This is called the recency effect. Your brain gives extra weight to the last thing it processes in any experience. You're using the natural close of the interaction to seal the memory shut. 4 hacks. Each one takes less than 5 seconds. Each one is rooted in exactly how your brain actually stores information. No repetition, no awkward tricks. Just working with your brain instead of fighting it. Start with just one. Pick the one that felt most natural when I described it, and use it in your very next conversation. Just one, that's all. Because the goal isn't perfection. The goal is never again standing in front of someone you care about with your brain handing you absolutely nothing. Now, if this video made you feel seen, if you heard something in here that you've never heard anyone explain before, do me one small favor. Hit that like button right now. Not for me, for the algorithm. Because that one tap puts this video in front of someone else who has been quietly carrying this exact same thing and has no idea there's an explanation for it. And if you're new here, subscribe. Because this channel exists for one reason only, to hand you the psychological tools that school never gave you and that most people spend their entire lives never finding. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of the 4 hacks are you trying first? I read every single one. Now, before you go, we just talked about forgetting names, but here's what I didn't tell you. Forgetting names is just one symptom of something much bigger happening inside you. There is a specific psychological pattern, one that affects how you make decisions, how you handle pressure, how you show up in relationships, that most people have zero awareness of. And the people who do know about it, they use it to completely rewrite how their life operates. The next video is going to change something fundamental about how you understand yourself. I'll see you there.